It's another day in paradise. This is knowledge time. Welcome, alchemist. Uh, Today I'll be reading from the book "The Laws of Human Nature" by Robert Greene. Um, I'm currently. This will be chapter 3, part 2, and part two goes as keys to human nature. We humans are consummate actors. We learn at an early age how to get what we want from our parents by putting on certain looks that will elicit sympathy or affection. We learn how to conceal from our parents or siblings exactly what we're thinking or feeling to protect ourselves in vulnerable moments. We become good at flattering those whom it is important to win over, popular peers or teachers. We learn how to fit into the group by wearing the same clothes and speaking the same language. As we get older and strive to carve out a career, we learn how to create the proper front in order to be hired and to fit into a group culture. If we become an executive or a professor or a bartender, we must act the part. Imagine a person who never develops these acting skills, whose face instantly grimaces when he dislikes what you say or cannot suppress a yawn when you fail to entertain him. You always who always speaks his mind. You completely who completely goes his own way in his ideas and style, who acts the same whether he's talking to his boss or to a child. And you have imagined a person who would be shunned, ridiculed, and despised. We are all such good actors that we're not even aware of this as it happens. We imagine we are almost always being sincere in our social encounters, which any good actor will tell you is the secret behind really believable acting. We take these skills for granted, but to see them in action, try to look at yourself as you interact with different members of your family and with your boss and colleagues at work. You will see yourself subtly changing what you say, your tone of voice, your mannerisms, your whole body language to suit each individual and situation. For people you are trying to impress, you wear a much different face than with those with whom you are familiar and can let down your guard. You do this almost without thinking. Over the centuries, various writers and thinkers looking at humans from an outside perspective have been struck by the theatrical quality of social life. The most famous quote expressing this comes from Shakespeare: "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in this time plays many parts. In the theater, and actors were traditionally represented by the image of mass. Writers such as Shakespeare are implying that all of us are constantly wearing masks. Some people are better actors than others. Villainous types such as Iago in the play Othello are able to conceal their hostile intentions behind a friendly, benign smile. Others are able to act with more confidence and bravado. They often become leaders. People with consummate acting skills can better navigate our complex social environments and get ahead. Although we are all expert actors, at the same time we secretly experience this need to act and play a part as a burden. We are the most successful social animal on the planet. For hundreds of thousands of years, our hunter-gatherer ancestors could survive only by constantly communicating with one another through nonverbal cues develop over so much time before the invention of language. That is how the human face became so expressive and gestures so elaborate. This is bred deep within us. We have a continual desire to communicate our feelings, and yet at the same time the need to conceal them from proper social functioning. With these counter forces battling inside us, we cannot completely control what we communicate. Our real feelings continually leak out in the form of gestures, tones of voice, facial expressions, and posture. We are not trained, however, to pay attention to people's nonverbal cues by sheer habit. We fixate on the words people say while also thinking about what we'll say next. What this means is that we are using only a small percentage of the potential social skills we all possess. Imagine, for instance, conversations with people you've recently met. By paying extra close attention to the nonverbal cues they emit, you can pick up their moods and mirror these moods back to them, getting them to unconsciously relax in your presence. As the conversation progresses, you can pick up signs that they are responding to your gestures and mirroring, which gives you license to go further and deepen the spell. In this way, you can build up rapport and win over a valuable ally. Conversely, imagine people who almost immediately revealed signs of hostility toward you. You are able to see through their fake tight smiles to pick up the flashes of irritation that crosses their face and the signs of subtle discomfort in your presence. Registering all this as it happens, you can then politely disengage from the interaction and remain weary of them. Looking for further signs of hostile intentions, you have probably saved yourself from an unnecessary battle or an ugly act of sabotage. Your task as a student of human nature is twofold. First, you must understand and accept the theatrical quality of life. You do not moralize and rail against the role playing and the wearing of masks so essential to smooth social functioning. In fact, your goal is to play your part on the stage of life with consummate skill, attracting attention, dominating the limelight, and making yourself into a sympathetic hero or heroine. Second, you must not be naive and mistake people's appearances for reality. You are not blinded by people's acting skills. You transform yourself into a master decoder of their true feelings, working on your observation skills and practicing them as much as you can in daily life. And so, for these purposes, there are three aspects to this particular law: understanding how to observe people, learning how basic keys for decoding nonverbal communication, and mastering the art of what is known as impression management, playing your role to maximum effect. Number one, observation skills. When we were children, we were almost all great observers of people because we were small and weak. Our survival depended on decoding people's smiles and tones of voice. We were often struck by the peculiar walking styles of adults, their staggered smiles and affected mannerisms. We would imitate them for fun. We could sense that an individual was threatening from something in his or her body language. This is why children are the bane of invertebrate liars, con artists, magicians, and people who pretend to be something they are not. Children quickly see through their front. Slowly, from the age of 5 onward, this sensitivity is lost as we start to turn inward and become more concerned with how others see us. You must realize that it is not a matter of acquiring skills you do not possess, but rather of rediscovering those you once had in your earliest years. This means slowly reversing the process of self-absorption and regaining that outward directed view and curiosity you had as a child. That's what I'm learning now. As with any skill, this will require patience. What you are doing is slowly rewiring your brain through practice, mapping new neuronal connections. You do not want to overload yourself in the beginning with too much information. You need to take baby steps to see small but daily progress. In a casual conversation with someone, give yourself the goal of observing one or two facial expressions that seem to go against what the person is saying or indicate some additional information. Be attentive to micro expressions, quick flashes on the face of tension, or forced smiles. See the next section for more on this. Once you succeed in this simple exercise with one person, try it with someone else, always focusing on the face. Once you find it easier to notice cues from the face, attempt to make a similar observation with an individual's voice, noting any changes in pitch or the pace of talking. The voice says a lot about people's level of confidence and their contentment. Later on, graduate to elements of body language, such as posture, hand gestures, positioning of legs. Keep these exercises simple, having simple goals. Write down any observations, particularly any patterns you notice. As you practice these exercises, you must be relaxed and open to what you see, not champing at the bit to interpret your observation with words. You must be engaged in the conversation while talking less and trying to get them to talk more. Try to mirror them, making comments that play off something they have said and reveal you are listening to them. This will have the effect of making them relax and want to talk more, which will make them leak out more nonverbal cues. But your observing of people must never be obvious. Feeling scrutinized, people will freeze up and try to control their expressions. Too much direct eye contact will betray you. You must appear natural and attentive, using only quick peripheral glances to notice any changes in the face, voice, or body. In observing any particular individual over time, you need to establish their baseline expression and mood. Some people are naturally quiet and reserved, their facial expression revealing this. Some are more animated and energetic, while still others continually wear an anxious look. Aware of a person's unusual demeanor, you can pay greater attention to any deviations. For instance, sudden animation in someone who is generally reserved, or a relaxed look from the habitual nervous. Once you know a person's baseline, it will be much easier to see signs of dissimulation or distress in them. The ancient Roman Mark Antony was naturally a jovial person, always smiling, laughing, and poking fun at people. It was when he suddenly turned silent and sullen in their meetings after the assassination of Julius Caesar that Antony's rival Octavius, later Augustus, understood that Antony was up to something and had hostile intentions. Related to the baseline expression, try to observe the same person in different settings. Noticing how their nonverbal cues change if they are talking to a spouse, a boss, an employee. For another exercise, observe people who are about to do something exciting. A trip to some alluring place, a date with someone they've been pursuing, or any event for which they have high expectation. Note the looks of anticipation, how the eyes open wider and stay there, the face flushed and generally animated, a slight smile on the lips as they think of what's about to come. Contrast this with the tension exhibited by a person about to take a test or go on a job interview. You are increasing your vocabulary when it comes to correlating emotions and facial expressions. Pay great attention to any mixed signals you pick up. A person professes to love your idea, but their face shows tension and their tone of voice is strained. Or they congratulate you on your promotion, but the smile is forced and the expression seems sad. Such mixed signals are very common. They can also involve different parts of the body. Excuse me. Oh, yeah. In the novel The Ambassadors by Henry James, the narrator notices that a woman who has visited him smiles at him during most of the convention, but holds her parasol with a great deal of tension. Only by noticing this can he sense her real mood, discomfort. With mixed signals, you need to be aware that a greater part of nonverbal communication involves the leakage of negative emotions, and you need to give greater weight to the negative cue as indicative of the person's true feelings. At some point, you can then ask yourself why they might feel sadness or empathy. To take your practice further, try a different exercise. Sit in a cafe or some public space, and without the burden of having to be involved in a conversation, observe the people around you. Listen in on their conversations for vocal cues. Take notice of walking styles and overall body language. If possible, take notes. As you get better at this, you will try to guess people's profession by the cues you pick up, or something about their personality from their body language. It should be a pleasurable game. As you progress, you will be able to split your attention more easily, listening attentively to what people have to say, but also taking careful note of nonverbal cues. You will also become aware of signals you had not noticed before, continually expanding your vocabulary. Remember that everything people do is a sign of some sort. There is no such thing as a gesture that does not communicate. You will pay attention to people's silence, the clothes they wear, the arrangement of objects on their desk, their breathing patterns, the tension in certain muscles, particularly in the neck, the context in their conversations, what is not said or what is implied. All of these discoveries should excite and impel you to go further. In practicing this skill, you must be aware of some common errors you can fall into. Words express direct information. We can argue about what people mean when they say something, but the interpretations are fairly limited. Nonverbal cues are much more ambiguous and indirect. There is no dictionary to tell you what this or that means. It depends on the individual and the context. If you are not careful, you will glean signs but quickly interpret them to fit your own emotional bias about people, which will make your observations not only useless but also dangerous. If you are observing someone you naturally dislike or who reminds you of someone unpleasant in your past, you will tend to see almost any cue as unfriendly or hostile. You will do the opposite for people you like. In these exercises, you must strive to subtract your personal preferences and prejudice about people. Related to this is what is known as Othello's error. In the play Othello by Shakespeare, the main character, Othello, assumes that his wife, Desdemona, is guilty of adultery based on her nervous response when questioned about some evidence. In truth, Desdemona is innocent, but the aggressive, paranoid nature of Othello and his imitating questions make her nervous, which he interprets as a sign of guilt. What happens in such cases is that we pick up certain emotional cues from other persons, nervousness, for instance, and we assume they come from a certain source. We rush to the first explanation that fits what we want to see. But the nervousness could have several explanations. Could be a temporary reaction to our questioning or the overall circumstances. The error is not in the observing, but in the decoding. In 1894, Alfred Dreyfus, a French military officer, was wrongly arrested by passing along secrets to the Germans. Dreyfus was a Jew, and many French at the time had anti-Semitic feelings. When first appearing before the public for questioning, Dreyfus answered in a calm, efficient tone that was part of his training as a bureaucrat and was also a result of his trying to contain his nervousness. Most of the public assumed that an innocent man would protest loudly. His demeanor was seen as a sign of his guilt. Keep in mind that people from different cultures will consider different forms of behavior acceptable. These are known as display rules. In some cultures, people are conditioned to smile less or touch more, or their culture involves greater emphasis on vocal pitch. Always consider the cultural background of people and interpret their cues accordingly. As part of your practice, try to observe yourself as well. Notice how often and when you tend to put on a fake smile or how your body registers nervousness. In your voice, the drumming of your fingers, the twiddling with your hair, the quivering of your lips, and so on. Becoming accurately aware of your own nonverbal behavior will make you more sensitive and alert to the signals of others. You will be better able to imagine the emotions that go with the cue. You will also gain greater control of your nonverbal behavior, something very valuable for playing the right social role. See the last section of this chapter. Finally, in developing these observational skills, you will notice a physical change in yourself and in your relationship to people. You will become increasingly sensitive to people's shifting moods and even anticipate them as you feel inside something of what they're feeling. Taken far enough, such powers can make you seem almost psychic, as they did with Milton Erickson. Okay, that's the end of part 2. Tomorrow is part 3, and part 3 is decoding keys, chapter 3. In closing, subscribe to the channel, comment any questions you have, like if the information was inspiring for you, and share this knowledge with other alchemists. Also, follow me on Instagram for more progressive knowledge. My Instagram, you can find me at max_Bugatti_8008. I'm all about family first. I'm an investor, stocks, and alternative energy. I'm a filmmaker. I'm an aerospace botanist. I have a confidence building program, and I'm currently out here. 49ers, Golden State, Oakland Raiders. While you're slaying dragons, I'll be taming them.